Welcome to the Enneagram Global Summit 2020, 9 Essential Pathways for Transformation. This session is called Antiracism and the Enneagram, in search of the heart of humanity. And we're joined by the indomitable Dr. Deborah Egerton. And Deborah is the founder and president of Trinity Transitions Consulting. And she has been a social and racial advocate for over 2 decades. And I've heard through the grapevine that people are calling her the Jedi of the Enneagram because of her work. Walking point, as they say, with healing racial injustice with the use of the Enneagram. So, Deborah, so honored to have you here, so filled with joy.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And once again, it's wonderful to be with you for another year.
Well, what a year it's been.
You can say that again.
I mean, it's an unprecedented year. It's like nothing any of us could have ever imagined. And you and I have been having this conversation about not only racial injustice in general, but just how it is that, like so much of the world, even when people don't intend for it to be segregated, because the world is still suffering from separation and segregation, the Enneagram field itself really has to come into awareness and see the ways that we have unconsciously had biases or just blinders that haven't allowed this. This particular summit's such a celebration because we have so many people of color, so much diversity, more than ever before. And you were doing that and walking that in the Enneagram field for years. So now here we are, COVID, new wave of, like the civil rights in the 60s and 70s, new wave of awareness. And I know that you are in demand. It's like suddenly everyone wants the work that you've been developing to be brought into their organization, their company, their systems. So tell us a little bit what that's been like for you, to go from a place where you were literally having to kind of almost be willing to knock the door down to the doors are just being flung open.
Jessica, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Outliers some years ago, and I absolutely love his work. And in Outliers, he talks about how people, in order to really fine-tune their craft, they need 10,000 hours of practice. And what I believe is that because I have been on this journey for such a long time, I was around during the civil rights movement. I've always been a social and racial equity advocate. I've always worked as a little warrior to, knock those doors down. And it began in my childhood. I was that young woman who often was given an opportunity to enter into a space, in some ways, sadly, because I was light-skinned and green-eyed, and I was allowed to enter first. But my parents always made it very clear to me that I was opening doors for others to follow. Mm-hmm. And I have done that all my life, and I will continue to do that, because if you look at the trajectory of my path, even within the field of the Enneagram, I remember being in Enneagram classes where I was the only Black person in the class. I can remember going to conferences where I was one of very few Black people showing up. And of course, you so well remember, I believe it was 2017, when I stood up and said, where are the Black people? Where are the people of color? And you came and backed me up, and I'll never forget that, Jessica. So I think we formed a special bond from that moment on. I think that you You demonstrated what I'm trying to teach people now, and that is how to be an ally, what it looks like if you are truly trying to show up for BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color. If you're really not just talking, but you're also walking in our shoes alongside next to us, how do we show up? And that's what's so important. So I will say that it is exhausting and amazing and miraculous all at the same time that, yes, people are asking me to come and speak and they want to know how to become allies. We're at a very powerful inflection point in the universe right now. The portal has opened, and I feel grateful to be alive at this moment in time to perhaps fulfill my purpose, because I do believe this is an assignment for me, and I welcome it.
Well, Deborah, I feel blessed to be a friend of yours, to be a colleague of yours. And I remember well the moment that you're talking about at that international conference, and the feeling of standing by your side and speaking out with you is something that I will treasure. You know, it will flash before my eyes at the moment that I die, I'm sure, because it was so powerful. And so I'll just offer one little thing about being an ally as you are going to take us into these teachings. In that moment, I think part of what made it possible for us to bond in a real way was that not only was I feeling your pain and the pain of the two other out of like 300 people that were of color in a room that was supposed to be about personal growth, I think I was able to experience the poverty that it brought to my soul as well as to everybody else's. Like, and so becoming an ally can't be about feeling good about oneself. Like, oh, it's really like getting that there's a core of suffering for all of us. We are all poverty stricken, and so we're not helping someone in the sense as from a place of superiority. And that's how I feel with you. I feel like I'm lucky to get to stand with you. I'm as much helped as you are. And I hope if I'm helping at all. So I with humility, offer that feeling about what being an ally takes, I think.
Yes. Jessica, that is, and it's beautiful that you used really right from the two, you went right to the virtue of humility, and how important it is to really stand in that healthy space, to stand in the place where you are operating not from the fixation of your personality, but you have sort of transcended that and moved into a healthy space where you're propelled into action. And that's what it felt like that day. It felt like, I would imagine, because I've had this happen many times in my life, where I might have been somewhere and then I found myself somewhere else, and I'm not completely sure how I got there. But it was like, angels lift you up and they reposition you to where you need to be. And this is what I am teaching as I'm working with people to become allies, is how we move from being what I would call, there's the intentional racism, and then of course there is the passive racism. And we've got to move into actually being unafraid to become anti-racist, because just saying that I am not a racist is not enough. Mm-hmm. People are dying. People are being brutalized. People are losing their livelihood, being denied basic human rights, not being allowed to advance sometimes in organizations. Everything from, the little microaggressions that we talk about, where if you're a Black person or a person of color and you go to a restaurant, you get seated next to the toilet in the back, or you get seated somewhere where the workstation is. And I mean, it's so deeply enmeshed in our society, and people don't necessarily want to look at it. But as you know, my background is also that of a psychotherapist, and I transitioned into doing coaching some years ago for many reasons. But one of the main reasons is because I wanted to be able to reach more people, larger groups of people. And when I started doing the coaching work, I started to notice how when I would engage with people, there were some people who were connecting with me in the heart space. Mm-hmm. And then there were others who just wanted to debate everything in the head space. Mm-hmm. And I recognized that around this issue of racism, we can't debate it from our headspace. Mm-hmm. You can't argue with people using data and logic and reason. It really starts with a heart shift. And it starts with people being willing to feel the personal pain. And when you feel the pain that has been inflicted on people for over 400 years in this country, you cannot, if you actually desire to be an anti-racist, you cannot not act. And if you're studying the Enneagram, you know how to do inner work. And it's the inner work that we have to do and go down deep into looking at what holds us back. Why would we not want to get on board and be allies for people who are being marginalized? And the only reason that we would do that is because we're asleep. Mm-hmm. And the Enneagram is about waking up. Mm-hmm. So I look at the Enneagram as the community, the Enneagram community, as a place that can actually lead in this anti-racism. Mm-hmm. If we're waking up and we're studying the Enneagram, Jessica, please tell me, why are we doing it if it's not to go to the heart of humanity and to look at how we heal and connect, how we actually get to universal oneness? How will we elevate in consciousness if we're not doing that part of the work too? So obviously, I'm very passionate about this.
So, and when we talked about this session, Deborah, we talked about looking at 9 styles of racism. We looked at 9 ways of becoming an anti-racist. We looked at 9 ways of becoming an ally. All of these things are so powerful. So I'm going to just leave it to you to trust right now in the zeitgeist and the logos of what you're experiencing here and all these people listening around the globe. What can we give about allies, about becoming an anti-racist through the lens of the Enneagram?
If we are working and looking at becoming anti-racist through the lens of the Enneagram, every single point on the Enneagram has a gift. And people who enter from whatever point you stand on the Enneagram, and I tend to say point on the Enneagram more than I do type now, because I do like for people to really understand that we have access to all 9 of those energies. And depending upon how you've been doing your work, you can feel the power of all 9 energies of the Enneagram. However, the more we try to understand and really do our Enneagram work, we can really kind of hone in on what the particular gifts are and what are the things that can hold us back from each type. And this is the work that I'm doing with organizations and with Enneagram associations when I go to speak, because if we look at each of the types, so let's just start with the centers, the body center, and there we have 8, 9, and 1. And I think of people who are positioned in the body center are actually the anti-racist advocates. These are body types who can absolutely embody what it means to be an advocate. I mean, just think, let's start with 8. An 8 can stand up and say, no, that's just wrong. And can say it. And this is the most powerful part that I really want to get across this year, because we talk about this quite a bit. However, I think the piece that people are missing is that everything that goes into the work of anti-racism has to come from a place of love. And if it doesn't come from a place of love, we're not getting allies, we're creating adversaries. Because if it turns negative, if it turns ugly, if it turns toxic, it just shuts people down. So when I talk about an 8 standing up and saying, no, this stops here, it's working with your anger, it's working with your frustration, it's working with the recognition that as an 8, you want to protect and be there for people who have sometimes not only been marginalized, but have been deemed as other. And when an 8 comes into the space of becoming an advocate and standing on the lines as an anti-racist, an 8 has to enter with the power and the strength and the capacity to speak up and speak out, and the heart of the 2. The love has to absolutely come out when 8s are trying to advocate for people who are marginalized. The 9 at the same time has the capacity to feel what's going on in any given situation, and to feel that energy of all the people, the anger, the frustration, the marginalization, the demonization. And the 9 will feel that in their gut in a way where they're trying to sort through it and synchronize it so that they can actually step up and make the statement or take the right action that is needed. However, the 9 really has to access that ability to speak on behalf of others, not lose themselves, and enter as that peacemaker, but that peacemaker who's not just in it to create peace and harmony for themselves, but to create peace and harmony for all around. And the willingness to not to detach from the situation, not to run away from it, but absolutely to enter into it and to be able to mediate, and to be able to mediate with the gentleness that a 9 can bring to any given situation. And then the 1, which I'm of course most familiar with, being an Enneagram 1, sometimes I laugh and I think, I know I was born to do this work. However, as a 1, when we enter into the space to be advocates and to stand in the space of being anti-racist, what we have to be mindful of is the self-righteousness that can really get in the way, and the feeling that we can only go at this one way without getting the allies, bringing other people in and listening to the ideas and the suggestions. And of course, one of the most powerful gifts that I have learned that I can bring to this work is when I access my energy at 7, And I absolutely, I tell people this all the time. I'm hilarious if you know me really well. If you know me well, I have a capacity, as all ones do, if we allow ourselves to go there, to lighten up enough to bring people along with love and in a joyful way. Because the cause of becoming an ally and standing against racism and becoming an anti-racist, there's a tremendous amount of joy in that. There's a tremendous amount of joy when you recognize that you are a part of something that is liberating. You're part of dismantling systemic racism, becoming part of standing in the space and saying, no, we will not be moved. We will not allow this to continue. We will, we will lift up the knee off the neck, the oppression from the people, and we will do it with love. And one other thing, Jessica, that I'll add, you know, as a therapist, I used to wonder how long it took for someone to witness someone else's pain before they began to experience it as their own pain. And of course, you know, I never make any apologies for being a woman of faith. When George Floyd was murdered, and I made myself watch that, and I didn't make it anywhere near 8 minutes and 46 seconds before my heart broke. But I believe that 8 minutes and 46 seconds it's significant. It's a significant amount of time. And maybe that's what it takes for humanity to wake up. So that's just talking about the body center and how body center 8, 9s, and 1s enter as advocates. But then in the heart center, we have 2s, 3s, and 4s, and they enter as healers. So the heart center types are always our healers, and they heal in so many beautiful ways. The 2s, as you well know, Jess, that 2s enter with an authenticity and a desire to serve and to help. And at the same time, the love has to remain there, but the love has to be authentic. And so there has to be a love of self and understanding how much you can commit to. It's a beautiful thing to love humanity and to want to step up as a healer and to be in this as an anti-racist. But if you have committed to 1,000 other things and you're completely exhausted, but you're going to do this because you feel that sense of, this is where my heart should be, I'm just going to say, take a step back and first make sure that you're healing and caring for and loving on yourself, and then come out and love on the rest of us as, you know, an anti-racist and get in the charge. But coming into an effort like this exhausted, I can guarantee you'll get triggered. You'll get triggered because the exhaustion takes over, and it doesn't, let's talk about a peaceful protest. What does that look like to have a 2 at a peaceful protest? Exhausted, determined to be there, authentically there with your heart, but then someone does something that is just so out of line, so inappropriate, so hurtful. I ask you, Jessica, what would you do?
If I'm rested,
Yes.
I would see to the heart of the need of that person that does something out of line. They are expressing some need that they don't know any other way to get it met but to do this behavior. And so I would be trying to feel into what that need was. And if I had the capacity to talk with them, I would ask them how I could help. I wouldn't pretend to know anything. I wouldn't think that I knew what to do. I would be genuinely trying to have them feel that there were different pathways for their need and even their vision to get expressed. So it would be, how can I help? What do you need? And listening deeply. Yeah.
And that's exactly how you would want to show up as a healer. It's listening on the other side and recognizing, and hopefully people are not tired of hearing me say this, and I will continue to say it to my dying day: hurt people hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
And so people who are hurting will project their pain, their suffering onto other individuals. And two, so very often will try to stand in that space, but a two can get angry. A two can get so triggered when exhausted, and when the microaggression comes in the direction of someone that a two loves or cares about, or a cause that you care about, and all of a sudden you've got people on the other side screaming, racial slurs, racial epithets, and they're just being mean-spirited and horrible. And I have seen tired twos just really explode.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, of course, the part of every human that understands why someone would explode in that moment. However, the rational brain and the angry brain do not operate together. And once the angry brain takes over, there are not actions that are going to come forth that are healing. The actions that come forth are just going to come from a place of anger. This is a love battle. This is a love battle. And I've spent a lot of time explaining and sharing with people that no matter where you stand on the Enneagram, whatever point, whatever energy is dominant in your being, anything that turns into ugliness and something that is already ugly, when you add something else that is negative into that, it does not make it better. Mm-hmm. And teaching people how to approach this work from a place of love. I will tell you, I have every right and every reason to be angry. There have been enough things that have happened in my personal lifetime, to me personally, to my family, to my husband, my children, my grandchildren. However, I know that my anger at the point of my passion, I can feel that and I can touch it and it wakes me up. But the actions that go out into the world have to come from a place of authentic love. Mm-hmm. Or else I'm becoming what is on the other side of this. Mm-hmm. And as I've shared with so many, Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, we will not be the ones to end racism because we didn't create it. Mm. We will not be the ones to end it. And so, yes, I am speaking up and out to the hearts of the Enneagram community and to all people to say, get in this, because racism is going to come to your door in some way, shape, or form. It will come because your children decide that they want to fall in love with and marry across racial lines. Mm-hmm. Your grandchildren may be biracial. Your best friend may decide to become a very strong ally and advocate for anti-racism, and you won't understand what that passion is coming from. some way, somewhere, it will enter. And if you haven't done the work to recognize that we are all dealing with and suffering from this scourge on society, if we don't work together to heal society and go to the heart of humanity and search our hearts to find out, why are we letting this continue? Why? It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I appeal to everyone, particularly in the Enneagram community, because the Enneagram community is still a very white spiritual community. And while I can honestly say I have not had horrible experiences being a part of the community, I love the Enneagram community. I love the Enneagram. I just want the community to kind of take a stand,
Mm-hmm.
and to stand against racism and not be afraid to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If we're studying the Enneagram, if we understand the power of love, if we're doing inner work should result in outward action. And at some point, the outward action should be powerful enough to really make some changes in the world that have been a long time coming.
Or as you said, why else would we be doing the work? Because the work of the Enneagram is about integrative wholeness. Every center, which by extension would mean all the centers of intelligence in the whole planet. So it's our moment has come. You're right.
Yes.
It's our moment to stand up and be anti-racist. And that's why we wanted to name this session right out there, Antiracism.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you were willing to do that, because we went right to it, didn't we?
Well, so you've given us 8912, like how to be an anti-racist through those lenses. Let's make sure we get in the others. Yeah.
So for a 3, and I like to talk about the difference between even entering, 3s are also in the heart center, and 3s enter in a place where, looking at becoming anti-racist, it's really important to use that charisma and influence in a positive way. So many situations can really be kind of, you can prevent them from escalating by having someone who is having that conversation from a place of authentic love and kindness, and by someone who is good at being able to stay in the space with someone who may be coming against them, to be able to use the gift of being somewhat charming, the gift of being able to move to finding a solution by being, I find 3s to be very, very resourceful. And so sometimes the quick thinking of a 3, when they're really grounded and centered in that heart space in a loving way, when you come up against adversaries, 3s are very valuable in that space, because I've seen 3s sit down and have conversations with people that would not have gone beyond the first sentence were it not for the gift of the way a 3 can really bring such resourceful resolution and ideas into it, and can just stay in a space with someone in a very loving way. Like I said, when they're in a healthy space, and in a way of whole truth, just staying in the truth of what is what is behind what's going on and sort of tease it out. And so threes move in as healers in that way. And oh, God bless the fours. There's a lot of pain in this work, as you well know, Jessica, a tremendous amount of pain. However, when fours enter with true empathy and can stand by your side, I've had fours stand by my side, and I have felt very held, very held and very understood in some of this suffering. And what I say to fours, as I always try to express my gratitude for the participation, because nobody can go to the bottom of the well with me like a four and just sit there and let me be until I'm ready to rise again. However, what I caution fours about is don't flip the script. Don't flip the script. Stay with who you are there to help, who you are there to heal. And in all of this work, there's mutual healing that's going on based on all of these actions. I just help the fours to try to recognize, don't get caught up into your own narrative in this, and stay with the authentic reason of why you're here, and stay with the connection to all of humanity, and stay in that space. And that's where your gift is in order to be able to participate as an anti-racist. So that's the Heart Center. And hopefully people can see how the Heart Center, there are healers. They're the ones that the twos are there to help us. The threes are there to, kind of come up with the resourceful and the conversations to guide them sometimes where they need to go. And the fours stand by our side, with love and with a level of acceptance that does not feel like tolerance. It doesn't feel like tolerance. It feels like acceptance, and that's love. That's truly loving us. And then we go up into, of course, our head center, 5s, 6s, and 7s. And, I always say you have your advocates that enter first, you have your healers that enter next, and then you have your actual planners who, 5s, 6s, and 7s, they help us to get our stuff together, The advocates say, I'm here at your side. The healers say, and I'm here to help you heal. And the planners and the activators, as I call them, they help us get it all together. So when 5s enter, it is with that beautiful way of seeing how all things are connected and looking at how do these pieces fit together? How do they fit together in a way where we're not just pulling a little piece of this out and going off half-cocked? Let's really look at the whole picture. And when 5s do that work and then enter and stand in the truth of their power, 5s can actually put things out into the world and into the space where there is a process of educating and bringing people along that is just phenomenal. I was working with a 5 just a few days ago, and we were talking about how we're creating a sort of a timeline that goes between looking at the sort of historical evolution of global racism and looking at my humanity mosaic, and connecting these things in a way where people can actually see what happened at different points in time. And an example of that is just looking at how we have all these monuments to, the Confederate movement, the Confederate soldiers, the Confederate generals that are located all around the country. And many of them have been pulled down. And there are many people that are very angry about that. And it was actually one of my sevens working from the very, very healthy space at 5 who was putting this timeline together. And we were talking about how these monuments did not go up right after the Civil War. These monuments came along later in the 50s and 60s, and they were put up in order to kind of stifle sort of the civil rights movement and to have people kind of look in another direction. So they were a statement.
Wow.
They were a statement. And so much of this, so very much of this has been so intentional. And I'll say this, for a social construct, which is what race is, it's had a phenomenal run. And it has been so well put together that it will take all of us to really disassemble it, So it was working with my 5s and my 6s to just kind of dismantle and to show how the pieces fit together. There are amazing resources out there for people who want to have that full picture. And particularly the 5s and the 6s and the 7s, if you really want to activate the head center, and that's where you spend a lot of time anyway, look at some of the information that is so readily available to us now. The books, the movies, the documentaries, the videos, there's just so much information. And 5s, the way that you can enter that space and lovingly help us to put it all together, while 6s are looking at it and lovingly telling us what might go wrong, what might be missing, So 6s enter, and the way that 6s enter into that space, and I love it sometimes when I see a 6 run into coming into some of the anti-racism spaces, and some of the work feels terrifying. And at the same time, I will see a 6 courageously say, I'll do it afraid. I don't care, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a part of this. And the loyalty and the love that enters with that. I mean, the loyalty and the love is sometimes a little bit overwhelming for me. Just to see someone who has the power of the energy and the grace at 0.6. I have so many people at 0.6 on the Enneagram who are working in this space right now, in this anti-racism space. And then we get to the 7s. I hope the 7s are still hanging in here listening. I love to tease you all because that's my love number. I find that as an Enneagram who stands at the 0.1 on the Enneagram, I love my 7 energy. And just the willingness to engage in a healthy way, to be a part of something that matters, and to enter with love and with conviction. What I see from 7s, and I may have mentioned this in some past seminars that I've done, but we find that sevens tend to be early responders, first responders. The adrenaline, the excitement of entering into something, and wanting to be of service. And when sevens activate as anti-racists, they are actually very powerful in helping the movement to not only stay out of the heaviness of it, but also to be able to, much like threes, be very resourceful and very innovative, very, very innovative, entering into that space with love and entering that space, kind of keeping the rest of us somewhat buoyed up so that the weight of the oppression and the weight of how far we have to go, that it doesn't just weigh us down to a point where we can't keep moving forward. So there's something beautiful about the loving seven energy that keeps us moving forward and that says we can do this. We can do this and we can do it with love. Mm. So, like I said, Jessica, there's a gift that every single type brings to us. And at this point in time, we're here on this planet and there is something for us to do. And it is for us to really find each other again and to recognize that we are all connected. There is no place where my heart starts and your heart ends. We're connected. And if we are truly connected, then we need to love each other enough to recognize until Black lives matter, it's not possible for all lives to matter. Mm-hmm. It's just not.
Deborah, it's truly motivating the way that you've brought this to a call for all of us to rise up together and say yes to each other and say no to oppression, racism, and other forms of oppression. And you have given so much, and you are being asked to do so much now. Thank you for this powerful session. And still, one more offering I ask you to give our global community is, in the wake of 2020, this powerful year, the pandemic, George Floyd, new waves of awareness about systemic racism, political discord, the awareness of the environment, the fires, the climate crying out for us to be better stewards. All these places have the seeds of our own destruction or the seeds of our promise and possibility. And so what have you noticed, if anything, about your own type, which you say is point one, or your point that you tend to hang out in, that has maybe been like a characteristic sort of unconscious knee-jerk reaction to this intensity that we're all facing every day? And what is a gift of your type or your point that has been valuable to you and all that you come in contact with?
I would say, Jessica, that one of the things that I have noticed is that I feel the pain more intensely. I go to a place of not just feeling my own pain, but I am noticing the collective pain. And I am having moments where I literally feel like it's going to break me in two. And with that pain, I recognize that I would not be allowed to suffer in that way if there was nothing that I could do about it. And so I will actually take the pain of the recognition that, and I'll just share with you, this may not be a popular thing to say, but it's my truth, so I have to speak it. I don't think that here in the United States of America, that the millions of people that chose the status quo recognize how that feels to someone like me. It feels like the voice is saying, we reject you. We don't care what happens to you. We don't care whether you are here. In fact, we would rather you not be here. And so that is soul crushing, because I didn't expect that. I did not expect that. And while I know for many that was not the intention, it was still the impact. And if you speak to pretty much anyone who's Black and Indigenous or person of color, we have kind of a universal response. One is that that was soul crushing, and two is that we are exhausted. So the exhaustion and the pain, which seem to come every day, has taken me deeper into my meditation and my inner work. And what comes from that is my gift at one, which is the resolve to do the right thing, to be a good person, to make something better than I found it when I found it. Mm-hmm. And I am feeling the expansion of love in my heart in an unbelievable way, because when people are knocking on my door now and asking me, will I speak to them? Will I help them? Will I give recommendations for how to become an ally? My answer is a full body yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. And I think it's important for me to say this. Many people are not going to know who Dave Chappelle is, but he's a comedian who was on Saturday Night Live. And he said something that was very powerful, and it will resonate in my soul forever. I think it's important for me to say that as a Black person, I don't hate white people. I don't know how to hate white people. I don't want to hate white people. What I do hate is the feeling of oppression. Mm-hmm. So my gift is to continue to love and to do that full throttle now, because I think some people are actually listening. Mm-hmm.
Deborah Egerton, you can learn more about the work that she's doing with everyone at Deborah, DEBORAH, Egerton, EGERTON.com. And Deborah, it is an honor to be allowed to stand by your side at this time. Thank you for teaching all of us. Thank you for carrying pain the way you have with such grace. Thank you for being an advocate for love and for all beings. And we wish all of you, Deborah and I both wish all of you that are listening, much joy and grace and power, and a way to invite others to rise up with you as we meet these needs for change that are arising in our world. Thank you, everyone.